on the trailblazing entrepreneur. And I'll start with the personal profile. It's about an entrepreneur by the name Miko Rwayitare, and mostly I'll be referring to him as Miko. He was born in the 2nd December 1942 and died on 25th September 2007 at the age of 65 years. Mainly the book talks about his life in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. But if you look at his nationality, he was born in Rwanda. I'll tell you why his father sent him to Burundi, then he went to DRC, he went to Germany, and later to South Africa. And he's the owner and founder of 2 companies. One is Telecel, and the other one is GTS. GTS stands for Gold Technology Solutions. And his main industry was in telecommunications or ICT. And his main training, his peak training, he had a degree in electrical engineering from a university in Germany. And in that still slide, I explained who is a trailblazer. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, trailblazer is a person who makes a new trace through a wild country. Also, a trailblazer is a person who is the first to do something that other people later do. So we can call him or her an innovator, a pioneer, or explorer. So you'll find most of the things Miko did, he was the founder of everything he did. Next slide, please. The other slide has some pictures. I did not write names under each picture, but on my left top corner is his portrait, the Miko Rwayitare. Down there on my left is a building, a mansion he built in South Africa, and you'll see it is compared to a king's palace. Still on my left down there is a hotel he put up in South Africa. It's called the Mont Rochelle Hotel and Vineyard. On my right, you can see he has a beautiful bride, that's his wife. And then you will see that his main industry in South Africa was making wine. And one time he labeled his own production, the Miko wines. Next, please. So let's look at his background and training. I said Miko Rwayitare, I'll be referring to him to Miko. He was born in 1942 in Rwanda. So his home country is Rwanda. It's a town in the West. And I would like to say that he was born in a Catholic family that had strict rules. And his father was a government administrator. And when Miko was 12 years, the father sent him to a boarding school in Bujumbura, Burundi. You can imagine your father sending you to a different country at the age of 12 years. He went, but he only studied for 4 years. And in that school, they only concentrated in teaching Latin and Greek, and he was not so interested. So Miko was good at maths and science. And in his own way, he ventured, he looked for a school in a neighboring country, DRC. DRC means Democratic Republic of Congo. By then it was called Zaire, that had a scientific department. And so he wants to major in sciences. And he found a way of moving to DRC. And in DRC, he joined a school that was dealing with sciences, and he met a schoolmate called Gabriel Twagira. And Gabriel Twagira is the one who wrote this book. The reason why he wrote this book on his behalf is, I think Miko died before he could write his own biography, but his friend Gabriel, whom we'll find they were beer mates and schoolmates for the last 50 years, decided to do him an honor, and he wrote this book. And Gabriel in this book says that Miko was always among the top 10 students. And that is what earned him a scholarship to Germany, where he did his degree in electrical engineering. And so he's now a student in Germany, and he becomes involved in politics. He still wants to know what is happening back in DRC where he schooled. So in Germany, he adopted Congolese citizenship and joined youth wing of the Popular Movement Revolution. It was just a political party. And by this time, Mobutu Sese Seko is the president. And this political party Miko joins, it's like he's linking the youths to the current president. And Miko, while still in Germany, was able to follow events in Congo. And so after he cleared his degree, he worked as a technical manager in an engineering venture, which was called rubies System Software, for just 1 year. And Miko decided to return home to Zaire. Zaire, right now, it's called DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Before then, it was called Zaire. And he was appointed as a technical manager as data processing center in setting up database to assist potential investors. So one thing I like about him, he kept linked with the president at his country where he schooled in DRC. And when he resigned as a technical manager in Germany, he was given a position to work in the president's office. And the reason why he came back, the president had requested him to come back and try to woo investors, because by then Zaire was going through an economic slump. Next. So let's look at his company or enterprise profile. Where did he start? So he's now at the president's office, and he has the privilege to travel around the world. He gets exposure to global international technology trends. And he's able to tour Europe and USA. And as he goes for those tours from the president's office, he sees potential technology advances. So he thinks of, how can I adopt this back into my country? So in 1978, Miko decided to venture into his own business. An American friend of Miko called Jogat, whom we'll find, he partnered with him 50-50 in Telecel. This friend of his was running a hotel, an intercontinental hotel, and he told him of a certain technology called AMPS. AMPS is just something to do with network, which was open to civilians. It was in US. And so as they discussed, Miko saw it as an opportunity since telecoms infrastructure was so poor in Congo. He went to US, applied for permit to use the AMPS technology in Africa, and he got it. But later you'll find it was a struggle to bring this technology back to Congo. So back in Congo, he's short of capital. This is a challenge that faces most of the entrepreneurs. And by then, in Zaire, banks didn't have a culture of loaning money. He had tried to approach big businesses who refused to put up money in his projects. Nobody believed in the project. Even his own friend, Gabriel, who wrote this book, he thought that Miko was crazy. And I remember one time he told him, I can never invest in your wind industry. So forget this. It's too much you cannot afford. But let me tell you guys, this never stopped Miko. And so after some time, he decided to save some salary, and he decided to start with US dollars, $35. And also he raised 200,000 US dollars interest-free loan from Canadian fund to buy the equipment from US. He needs to buy the equipment, the AMPS technology from US, then he adopts and tries to invest in Congo. Next, please. So how did he start? So Miko set up his own company, but then he started by the label Computing Industrial Engineering, CIE, which was selling computers. And when he started, he had only 10 staff. They were sales and technical staff. And one thing I like about him, because it's a new area in his country, he decides to send them in shifts to US for training so that they can keep up with the latest trends and products. So he ran CEI for several years until computers became like the M-Pesa shop we can see now. So sometimes I look at business, and once it reaches the peak, you have to think of diversifying. So he sees another opportunity. So in 1985, Miko started Telecel, which is he's said to be the founder of Telecel in Africa. And Telecel is a mobile phone operator. It wasn't easy for him to get a license to operate a mobile phone network in DRC. Since by then it was only a government. So you can imagine you're working for the government, and if you're trying to venture out to private business, he either had to resign. But before he resigned, he decided, why can't I look for private partnership? And later on, we'll see whom did he approach. So he came up with something I like called strategic marketing tool. So he has Motorola handsets, and if you read the book, you're told that the Motorola handsets, it would weigh like one bottle of wine, the weight, and it was the first held phones. But then they only had landlines, and here he comes up with Motorola handsets. And what he did, he would go to the people who worked in government, who would influence him whom would influence for him to be given the license. And since it was so difficult, he gave them these phones, and he would give each person 12 months free of charge, and daily to have 30 minutes talk time. And that is how he managed. And he told them, use these phones, and if you're not interested in them, bring them back. And I'm telling you, that strategy worked. They were totally convinced. And guess what? Just after a year, Telecel license was offered at US dollars 1.5 million. And by this time, because of the marketing strategy he had 3,000 subscribers. So his entry strategy had worked. Being on mobile network became a very prestigious thing in Zaire. You can imagine by then owning a phone. You would make sure people are seeing what you're holding, and you'll be an icon. Next, please. The growth. How does he grow? Then after 5 years after his first launch, Miko was operating in 4 countries. So he had taken this technology of using mobile phones to 4 countries: Burundi, Guinea, Madagascar, and Central Africa Republic. And so in 1998, he had penetrated 8 countries, the previous 4, and now he has gone to Ivory Coast, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, including now his home country. And in 2000, he sold 80% of Telecel. You can imagine. I guess now this business also comes to a peak, and he decides to sell 80% of Telecel to an Orascom. Orascom is an Egyptian-owned mobile operator, and he sold at US dollars for 413 million. And by this time, he's selling 80%. Telecel was a household name in 11 countries. So Miko developed synergies with other operators. Synergy refers to cooperation of 2 or more organizations to produce combined effort to accomplish more together than they can separately. They can get more done working together than they can working apart. By this I mean, if you look at Africa, we believe that I should start my own business, Lynette. I decide to run on it. But if you look at accommodating synergy, means I look for somebody else who has equal strengths, we merge, and with that, we're able to accomplish more. So he believed in these synergies. And at some point, Miko left DRC Zaire and relocates to South Africa. And let me explain why. Remember, his home country, his birth country is in Rwanda. And if you've ever gone to Rwanda and you watch the Rwanda genocide, and if you go to those sites, you will find there was war between Hutu and Tutsi. Miko himself was a Tutsi, and even when he's in a neighboring country, DRC, they're still being chased away. So he decides to relocate to South Africa after the Rwanda genocide. He leaves after doing all this investment. But luckily he had sold 80%, so he's only monitoring telecell operations around 4. We'll see when he sold the 80%, he remained with 4 countries to look at. And I'm telling you, when he went to South Africa, he built an extravagant house in Johannesburg. Remember, I showed you that house, which was equal to a palace. And one thing I liked about him, he worked hard, but loved to enjoy his life as well. Next, please. His new venture, remember, he's now in South Africa. So he decides to consolidate his love for wine. He loves wine. When he's free, he tries to look at a way he can relax. And in South Africa, he buys a 82-acre wine farm. Imagine 82 acres. In Cape Town, in a town called Franschhoek, at only US dollars, 3 million. And one thing I like about him is that he was the first Black person in South Africa to own a wine farm. Look at how he's brave. So once he bought this farm, he decides to update the farm's production facilities, the wine quality, and build an export base. So he decides to do more. Then, at the wine farm, he was a part-time winemaker, and he was just doing it for pleasure. Remember, he is not doing much. He's a new country. Just for pleasure, he decides, while he's working there part-time, he thinks of how can I upgrade. But later he got bored of staying in the wine farm, and he flows back to office in Johannesburg, and he resumed the role of telecoms tycoon and investor. So in 2002, Orascom, remember the company he had partnered with earlier on, where he sold 80%. This company, Orascom, decides to pull out, and they sold 12 operations it had acquired from Telecel. And the owners of Orascom decided to go to larger markets in Algeria and Middle East. And out of the money Miko had, he only bought 4 of the mobile phone operations in 4 countries, that is Burundi, Uganda, Zambia, and Central African Republic. At least he doesn't lose everything. He has 4 countries, he can still run his telecell operations. And so in 2004, Michael was approached by somebody by the name Adrian and Patrice, and they asked him whether he could invest in Gold Technology Solutions, GTS, whose vision was to deliver fast, reliable, and affordable broadband to almost every home in South Africa. So remember, many other times as an entrepreneur, you might be approached by other investors. Will you say yes or no? He said yes. And what he did, Michael purchased 80% of the business, the GTS, and he became a major investor as the chairman. So in partnership with GTS, now it's Michael, Adrian, and Patrice, they did a pilot project, a 130 home pilot in Pretoria, whereby they would install technology, and it was at 30 megabytes per second, and it was 5 times the speed required by the commissioning municipality. So when you would go to get a license to start it's like what you have in Kenya, the fiber optic, you would require to produce something that has 5 times speed than the requirements, and he managed. Next, please. So he's now in GTS, and while still working there, he secured consensus with 3 South African municipalities. And this, what it means is these are 3 other companies. And remember, his main goal is to do synergy. He decides to join efforts with 3 other African municipalities to provide broadband services to over 1 million homes. Remember, by this time, they did a pilot project of 130 homes. It was successful. Now they raised the bar. They want to do the installation of broadband services to over 1 million homes. And so Michael had a vision of high definition of TV via broadband. So he thinks of, we can expand now. After we do the connections in homes, why can't we start our own TV station? So GTS submitted a tender to operate a pay TV license in South Africa, amongst other 15 bidders. In 2007, Miko dies, and before he dies, remember he had bidded. Only 5 bidders won in the tender to start a TV production, and his company GTS was not included. But what I like about the people he cooperated with, that despite Michael's death, I read somewhere that he died of continuous bleeding. I don't know what caught up with him. I don't know that's his platelets could not let the blood clot. He died of continuous bleeding, and GTS is still on track. And the people he had matched with are still running GTS, and investors are very determined to see the realization of his vision and goals. Next, his success. The way he succeeded, there are so many ways, but I only summarized a few. And first success was he shifted to DRC to pursue his dream in science department. Later got a scholarship in Germany to pursue a degree in electrical engineering. Remember, his father had sent him to Burundi, but when he found these people are not teaching what he wants, he decides this is not my area. Let me move on. So how many of us would be taken to a school, you find they're not offering whatever you want, and you're bold enough to move on? So I find that is a success. And the other one is that he maintained links with the president in DRC. That was Mobutu Sese Seko when he was still a student in Germany. And this made it easy for him to get a job in the president's office. And then another point is that when he was sent to Europe and US to woo investors, remember I said there was a time Zaire, now DRC, was going through an economic slump. The president would woo investors to come and invest in their country. So whenever he would be sent to US and Europe, he grabbed the opportunity to learn more about global international technology trends. And with that exposure, he started his own company, the Telecell, and partnered with other investors, the Orascom and the GTS. Another point I like is he was a strategist. Remember this strategic marketing tool he used to get Telecell license by giving handsets to those who would influence the government, which was the only monopoly. People might think that he was bribing them, but I look it from let me give you this handset. Use it for 1 year. If you're not happy with it, return it back. And I guess that is what made him move from one inch to the other. Then another point is that he became the first Black African, I forgot to include, the first Black African to own a wine farm in South Africa. Next, please. However, sometimes when you're sailing in the sea, it's never smooth. So he had some challenges and sometimes he failed. And so one is that he really struggled to get capital to import military equipment in US to start new technology. And many people thought his idea was crazy. Remember when he thought of adopting the AMPS? It was a technology used by the military in US. He needed this equipment to come and start up his company. He approaches big businesses. They don't offer him any capital. Banks are not loaning. And he approaches his closest friend, Gabriel, who says, I cannot invest in a wind company. So people thought it was crazy. So that was a struggle. And then during the Rwanda genocide, as a Tutsi, he was chased away in DRC after heavily investing his Telecell company. Luckily, he had other branches in other countries to oversee. Another challenge is, remember there's a time he sold 80% of Telecell to Orascom. And the time came in 2002, and Orascom pulled out of 12 operations, meaning Orascom pulled out of 12 countries after partnering with Miko. And later on, the only money he had, he could only afford 4 operations, that is 4 countries. So imagine at this time you merge with somebody, then at some point they just decide to leave. What will you do? And then another challenge he faced is that Gabriel, as he writes his book, his friend, friend to Miko is called Gabriel. He says that Miko never owned telecoms operations in his country of birth, that is Rwanda. Why? Miko, in his heart, wanted always to give back to his home country, where he was born in Rwanda. But whenever he tried the first trial, he was denied a license to start telecell company there by the government. I remember that time, the government said that the MTN, I don't know whether you watched the MTN network, the government said that MTN has better network than your telecell, so why should we invest in yours? Then the second trial, the Rwanda government blocked the deal. So when he died, he had never managed to invest back into his home country. Next, please. Now, this is what we should take home, his core beliefs and traits. What made him to be an entrepreneur, the founder of telecell in Africa? So in his eulogy, Gabriel, his classmate and beer mate for over 50 years, described Miko as one business visionary, a risk taker, and humble hard worker. And one time he was quoted saying, this is Gabriel who says, maybe when they were taking beer or wherever they were having fun, that to succeed in life, you need 3 components. Chance gives you 60%. Work gives you 20%. Imagination and ideas composes of 20%. So how many of us are able to grab a chance? Remember, an opportunity only knocks once. So 60% are the opportunities we should grab. Then another thing is that he was a good leader. Remember, in these companies he has started, he was a good leader in this way. The staff says he wanted to make his staff feel comfortable, from the cleaner to his partners. You didn't need protocol with Miko. He inspired loyalty and respect among those he led. Then, he had a French expression that said, without struggle, there's no glory. So he always regarded challenges as the most exciting part of life. So what do we do when we face challenges? Do we give up, or do we put our heads in the sand and say, it's just for a time, then I'm going to mushroom? And then Michael had a mantra. A mantra is something he would put at his home in his business. It says, don't ever dream big. Dream huge, and then you'll achieve big. And then the last one is he was influenced by Ernesto Che Guevara, who was a Cuban doctor. And this doctor, I believe one of us has always a mentor, somebody who motivates you, whether you meet face-to-face or you've read about him. And so this Cuban doctor abandoned his profession in his country to solve poverty issues in Africa. So from his mentor, he believed that telecommunications was a platform to alleviate poverty, because if there was good communication platform, this would provide a basis for trade, human resource development, protection of environment, and promotion of education. Next, please. The other one is that some of the interesting information I found is he was a Pan-Africanist, and he believed in Africa as a continent. So you can imagine, just not the way you only think of your business. He had Africa in his mind, and he thought for Africa to be developed, it needed people with drive. With this, I mean self-drive. He believed it was possible to achieve development if we worked hard and if there was passion. Then he was passionate about good living. Remember the pictures I showed you? He has a palace as his home. Remember the hotel he has put up, the Mont Rochelle. He believed in fine wines. And when he was relaxing, he loved classical music and jazz. Then he built a diversified portfolio. He invested in technology projects, hotels, financial services, medical research, and real estate. Next, please. There is a picture, a cartoon I found of this Miko. And Miko says that sometimes after working hard, you need to... Taka, are you here? I don't know whether Taka is here. After working so hard, you need some time to break the ice, go somewhere in a beach, relax, watch the sunrise, the sunset, feel the breeze, enjoy a glass of wine, relax, and you'll be at a capacity to generate new ideas. Thank you. So any comment, query is welcome.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you. That's a very fantastic presentation.
Thank
Any
you.
reaction, comment, contribution from our colleagues?
Hi, Lynette.
Hi, Aaron.
I really enjoyed the presentation, great research, and the way you've explained with passion. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Sure. I'm inspired by this man, his visionary approach to life. He actually is a great thinker. The strategies he used to get the license, as you're saying, not a bribe, but to build the relationships. I also respect how this man was able to keep a friend, one particular friend, for 50 years, from school days up to his old age. That's a great lesson in, sticking with your friends and good relations in life. Then the quote really inspires me that don't dream big, dream huge, then you'll achieve big. I really love the lessons from this man. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank
Karibu.
you. Thank you,
Lynette,
Aaron.
a
Anyone
question.
else?
I have a question.
Yes, Edna?
Did he ever go back to Rwanda?
No.
So since he was 12 years old, he never went back home.
No, there's no way we are told, like, whether sometimes you'd expect when the schools are closed, he would go back. There's no way we are told that he ever went back. Oh. And I guess the main point at which he wanted to come back as an investor, and he never got a chance.
He never got support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other?
Lynette.
Yes, Father Peter.
Thank you for the presentation. I just loved the way you internalized, the story. Even the manner you are pronouncing the name Rwayitare, it was like it was Mbugo from Kiambu. and one thing I'm impressed about in the life of this entrepreneur is how he rewards himself.
Yeah.
In our place, we call it kupigia mwili pole. After working for long, you need to take it cool and relax. Yeah. That is very inspirational. Sometimes you work hard only to, because you think of the next generation doing everything so that they have something to inherit. Yeah. We don't have time to enjoy life ourselves. I remember Dr. Acosta saying that he wanted to retire early so that he enjoys his retirement.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the Peter.
Just an observation I have made about all these entrepreneurs we've been looking at. Yes. Just like the video we saw in the morning by Dr. Acosta, this very successful men and women, they don't just venture in one thing. They keep venturing and investing in so many other fields until I think that's how they make their millions and billions. Because I think sometimes normally some of us, when you just feel as if you become a little bit successful, maybe you've ventured in one business on top of the work that you do, then you feel like, hey, now I've made it. But I realize they do so many things. They do so many things. They invest here, invest somewhere else, change the field they're doing. They see a gap here, and I think that's what makes them very successful.
Yeah, very true. Thank you, Edna.
Lynette, let me ask. So
yes, Harold?
Sure. So we saw in the morning Reginald was philanthropic. Anyway, that this great man was also helping the community?
Oh yeah, let me explain. In the last chapter of this book, his friend Gabriel doesn't tell much, but remember he says that he has Africa as the continent in mind, and he thinks of alienating poverty. And one thing he shared with his mentor, remember the Cuban doctor, he had an image of which platforms can we use to alienate poverty. And he said one was telecommunication. When there is good communication network, we are able to do trade, we are able to develop human resource, we are able to improve education. And what I remember one time, he co-founded a certain foundation with Kofi Annan. I didn't get a full picture. The picture I got was so broad, it was not clear. But one time he merged with Kofi Annan in UN, and he would travel with him to see where could they bring change, how could they help people get out of poverty. Yeah, so at some point in the last chapter, just a paragraph is given of his philanthropic activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comment before we go to the presentation of Tom?
Yes, I think the other thing that I would add, just to take it up from where Edna has left, apart from these different entrepreneurs being very diverse in terms of their investment, they also have a risk for appetite. I don't know if you've noticed, as in they're not scared of venturing into things that maybe they don't have like 100% full knowledge about it. They have a very huge risk for, appetite for risk, and also they are very visionary in terms of just looking at the big picture. So I think those are the two things I would take from this presentation. Thank you, Lynette, for the good job.
Thank you, Lucy, for appreciation.
I also wanted to make a comment.
Yes, Wafula.
Yeah. When I look at this presentation, it was very good. Congratulations. But I'm seeing a trend that most of the entrepreneurs we are looking at are beginning from where they are. What do I mean? They are beginning from their profession. Very few are just, but most of them are beginning from their profession or investing in something that they have some background knowledge. Then when they have gathered experience in running a business, then they start classifying. Because we saw the one of the Mwangi. Mwangi also began from where he was with the background knowledge in that particular area. So that's what the trend I'm seeing.
It's true.
And this guy was very daring. I like it.
Yeah, I like his bravery. Thank you, Afula.
That's a very good observation, Wafula. In fact, exactly my main objective why I am allowing you to discover, discuss, and present lives of entrepreneurs really based on your observation. You're very right. They started from their core. We call that one as core competencies. Okay, core competencies. You start from where your background, your training, and then if you notice, as Lynette has reported, after your core competencies, your training, your background, then now you extend to your passion, right? You extend to your passion. He loves wine, by the way, so he went to open businesses relating to wine. So something like that. So I think as teachers, as academicians, as educators, when we start a business, start with something you know best, okay? Because it's already very risky to start a business, how much more if you start a business in an area yet that you don't know. Okay, so to at least reduce the risks of failure, start with something that you know best, and that is, of course, education. Okay, so anything surrounding education would be a very fertile ground for innovation and new businesses. All right.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep on telling you before, never enter or start a business that you know nothing about. Okay, it's very risky. Do not just rely with a partner who owns the intellectual property and you don't know anything about that business. You're going to fail. Okay, you
Yeah.
will be at the mercy of the partner who knew the business. For example, do not enter, okay? Do not invest in matato business if you don't know anything about transport, by the way. Your drivers and your conductors will, fool you, will make many stories at the end of the day and you will end up losing. You do not enter a business, say poultry farming, if you don't know anything about chicken, okay? Your farm manager will just take advantage of you knowing nothing about poultry business. You understand? So if you join or if you start a business, be sure that you have not only basic knowledge, at least you know the ins and outs of the business. All right. uh,
Sorry, I have a question.
yes.
Yeah, so the Chris Kirubis of this world,
Hmm?
how are they doing it? Because we can't say they know stuff about what they're investing in. How do they end up doing all that? Because they're in so many different businesses. They have farms. They're in media.
Hmm.
I don't know. They have real estate. How do they do that?
Okay. Anyone who would like to answer that?
Yes, I can try.
Yes, Obadja.
Yes,
I think
Bloom's.
with the resources, the likes of Kirubi can hire now qualified personnel to manage their businesses.
Yes.
Yeah, I think with a huge amount of capital, with enough resources, they can get what they want. If they need the best accountants, they go for the best accountants. If they want to go for the best advisors, they get the best advisors. Everything around them will relatively work on their favor, rather to their advantage. Yeah,
I
it's money
wanted to
working
make
for
a
them. Wafula, yes. Thank you, Obadja.
To respond to what Lucy has raised.
Yes.
First of all, you see, my input was on their starting point. I've not read around Kerubi, but maybe we find out how did he start. The starting before he develops the experience and the techniques of running business enterprises. I'm very sure he might have begun in an area that he had some little knowledge about. And then with time, when he has gathered entrepreneurial skills and also he has developed the techniques of management, then he can go in for the passions and money.
Yeah.
Passion, where what I mean, the one that interests him more, and money, what I mean, is where there is more income.
All right, Daktari, I have another scholar in the house who is also an entrepreneur. He has a question to you. Will you mind?
Please.
All right, go on.
Daktari, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
And the class at large?
Yes.
My name is Moses.
Yes.
My name is Moses. My name is Moses Shira.
Moses, yes, Karibu.
And I've been really following your classes, especially when you're in class. I don't go out. So Lynette has to add something to you, some top-ups. Anyway, my question is, I'm an alumni of business school at the University of Dar es Salaam.
Yes.
And one of the areas that I've found entrepreneurs do, or rather they make them to be very successful, is that they venture in business that are not easily replicated by any other person. It's not easy to replicate.
Yes.
And one is like now what Lynette was presenting, the telecom area. Is not every Tom, Dick, and Harry will venture into that kind of business. So somehow they will tend to have a monopoly in that area.
Yeah.
And if you look at that, even in the other case that was presented of Reginald Mengi, you'll also find the areas that he ventured in, that is the publishing, the TV, radio. It's not the Mama Mboga or, the normal kind of business that maybe you can give an insight to your student, or also are also benefiting to that. Why? Or is it a trick, or maybe it's a skill that really whoever want to venture into such kind of business and you aim to be successful, that it's an area that whenever you want to decide that I want now to start a business, you look at an area really that is hard for any other person to come and copy, because this world is copy and pasting. You start a business today here, another one will set up another one similar, or even advanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. In fact, you're just reading my mind. So after the presentation of Tom, I'll be summarizing everything. I'll be discussing about the business model and exactly what you're saying. Okay, we come up with a business model that is difficult to replicate. Okay, very difficult to replicate. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Maybe just to answer the question a while ago, why many Kirubi, there are so many things. Yeah, you can do that, especially if you have already set up all your systems and your structures and your processes. Okay, and your company can operate even without you already. You understand? So if you have established your systems, your processes, your structures, your company will be in autopilot already. Okay, so that you can start so many businesses. Okay. Yes, Lynette.
No.
Okay, fine. All right, so thank you so much. Time is not on our side, so the time is 11:28. We shall now proceed with the presentation of Tom. So Tom, I have received your presentation. Let me just share it.
Yes.